Hello, everyone. Welcome back to True Print for Life. We are so excited to be here today. As you know, I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois.
And I am your host, Christina Vera. We have such a treat in store for all of you today. As you know, here at True Print for Life, we talk a lot about business, lifestyle, but finance is a huge, huge component in terms of, all of our episodes, really. We always kind of tailor it back to, how does money play a part in this? Or what do we need to be thinking about from a finance structure? And as you know, we love to bring guests on that have real expertise in these industries. And so today we have a heavy hitter, Mr. Perry Jeffries himself. For those of you who are not familiar with Perry Jeffries, he is the president of Diamond Equity Advisors, which is a registered investment advisory and business consulting firm here in Columbus, Ohio, with clients really across the country. As a traditional financial advisor, Perry's firm offers financial planning, asset management, investing, insurance, retirement planning to individuals and businesses. As a fractional CFO, Perry consults 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs. One day that will really be us. And small businesses in the area of cash management, profitability, debt reduction, and retirement and tax planning. Wow. Mr. Perry, wow. I mean, that was a lot to say.
Yes.
I mean, my goodness. But Perry, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, ladies. This is awesome.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
We're excited to be here. And so, Perry, before we dive directly into what a lot of people are talking about right now in terms of like investments, the stock market, is it the right time for buying a house? I mean, I think there's so much economic change, especially when we're seeing gas prices as high as they are, or groceries now being almost 3 times what the typical consumer household would be spending. So I think people right now are really, we're trying to figure it out, and leaning on experts like yourself are really, really critical. So we really want to dive into that. But before we do, we, really want to hear more about just who is Perry? Like, tell us a little bit about your background and really kind of what led you into an industry such as finance.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So first and foremost, I love what you guys are doing here. This is absolutely awesome. Very timely, right? So first and foremost, with my daughters in the room, I guess you'll say I'm a dad. Yep, they're not talking. Yep. So first and foremost, I'm a dad. Also to a child of God. Definitely a follower in that sense, and definitely my North Star with a lot of things they do with our clients. In addition to that, from Akron, Ohio originally. Been in Columbus now, be 20 years, or actually over 20 years here soon. And been in this financial service industry for 20 years, oddly enough. I was looking at the numbers, and I actually got a license as a stockbroker back in 2003. So in 2023, next year, it'll be 20 years in the industry. And every one of those years in the industry, I've always advised clients, whether it was small business owners or individuals, around finance and money. And recently, when I say recently, as of around 2014, we started to pivot and move more towards helping entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I'll dive a little bit more into that. But from a professional standpoint, that's where we are. You've already covered licenses and things of that nature. But what I will share to put a bow on top as far as my professional experience is our vision as a company, which we hold just very, very true and close to our hearts, is to close the wealth gap. And for those who don't know, by the year 2053, Black and brown people are projected to have 0 median net worth by that year.
So 0?
0. Not 100,000, not 0.
Oh, God.
Which is really alarming when you start to think about it, because we're starting to see where the income gap is getting more narrow, but the wealth gap is getting wider. So that's something to really pay attention to. So when I think about that, that's really where our company vision is. And then I tie that back to maybe kind of your initial question, like how did I get into this industry, and kind of personal experience. And I really attribute everything to my parents. So growing up in Akron, Ohio, my dad had this philosophy of, you need to have A, B, C, and D hustle, right? In his terms, he was saying you need to have multiple streams of income, right? And it was never, hey, you need to be an entrepreneur. So my dad, who retired as a firefighter, my mom, who retired from a corporate position, if you will, in retail, always instilled hard work and always instilled you need to go out here and get this money. So just to keep it 100. So I tell the story. I was doing a keynote at Ohio State years ago, and this was my mornings, right? It was wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because we had a paper route. And it started out with me having 30 customers, and my mom saw where I was making some money. Next thing I know, we had over 800.
Wow.
So it was a full-blown business. So wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, paper route. If you ever had a paper route, there are no days off.
Right.
So you learn consistency and perseverance and dealing with the code and not making excuses, right? So from there, my father had a business called PJ and Sons Tree Trimming and Removal. So y'all probably didn't realize I was a lumberjack in a former lifetime. So right, a lot of people don't know that, right?
New
Okay, so wake up in the morning, throwing papers. Right, they got to be out by 6:30. Then in the summertime, go directly from throwing papers to potentially cutting down trees. But even before that, my father, who was real big on volunteering, had us volunteering. So I was a swim instructor at the age, I think, 10 years old. I think I was the youngest swim instructor ever for the Red Cross and learn the swim program because I learned how to swim so early because my dad's a swim instructor, so we're both lifeguards. So we'd do that in the summertime. And then he had this crazy job where it was like, we picked up trash on the side of the highway. So you would see the convicts out there, but they was on one side and we was on the other side, and he called it the route. So I crack on him all the time because I had my daughters up one morning at 6 o'clock, and they're like, "Why you got those babies up so early?" I'm like, "Are you serious right now?
Don't they forget?
Are you serious
I don't know
right
what
now?
is it with these grandparents. They act like they forgot everything.
The
they
worst.
did.
Like, are you serious right
Right.
now? So, long story short, man, to kind of just tie it all together, my parents always taught me, to always have a different stream of income. But what they didn't have access to was how to create wealth. Mm-hmm. And what I tell folks all the time, looking at my parents, and definitely not a slight on them because it's just a matter, they didn't have access to the information that's available now, or it was available then, but nobody to really put them onto it. It was no reason for my parents not to be multimillionaires. Mm-hmm. My mom, who's a hard worker, she finished up in retail, but she was one of the first women to work assembly line at General Tire. She worked at Chrysler, like one of the hardest working women you ever want to meet, just an absolute beast when it comes to that. And my dad's the same way. Easily, had they had the right systems in place and the right advisors, could have lived off of one income. Oh, not to mention my dad is also a referee. So he's a basketball and a track referee. So like we hustle, and that's what I grew up with. But we didn't have any structure or systems or an advisor to say, hey, live on this one income and stack these other 5 incomes you have coming in and invest those dollars. Mm-hmm. Had they had that in place, multimillionaires. They didn't have that in place, so they're retired now. But they're living, they're down here with us. But where could their life had been? But also too, how could they have set me and my sister up more so for the future, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really when I say that vision of closing the wealth gap one business at a time, is because with the right tools and access to right information, we can close the wealth gap because people aren't lazy. They are here getting money. Yeah. They just really don't know what to do with it and who to trust.
They don't have the tools.
Yeah.
And I like that you say that because, especially with social media, I think there's this notion of like getting money, right? Mm-hmm. Whether if you don't have multiple hustles, you're not hustling. But then there's this, I also feel like there's this misrepresentation of what getting money really means. And because you can be like how your parents were, where you got 5-6 hustles happening, but you're not creating wealth. And nobody really stops to educate people on it's not about being busy if there's no profitability in that process. And so talk to us a little bit about just, in your experience and obviously, what you see now and the clients that you work with as entrepreneurs, and maybe you're not an entrepreneur because I'm very big on entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so really playing in the wheelhouse that makes sense for you and your household. If I'm not an entrepreneur and I have no desire to be an entrepreneur, how can I start making the decisions I need to make so that I don't necessarily have to wait to my 70s to retire? Yeah. So how do I make my money work for me? But then if I am an entrepreneur, seeing now what you've mentioned in terms of understanding that, having all these businesses is great, but really understanding what to do with the money and how to diversify that money. What would you say kind of is a starting point for either one of those clients?
Yeah. So great question. A lot to unpack there. And I'm going to start off by simplifying it by saying this. So for the listeners here, right? So whether you're on the books as an entrepreneur, so you got your LLC and your EIN number and all of that stuff that you hear that you got to have, from social media experts, or you're not an entrepreneur, you still need to learn how to run a business, because your household is the most important corporation you'll ever be a part of. So whether you're actually in business or you own a business or you're working a 9 to 5, and definitely no slight to people who are working 9 to 5s, you still need to know how to run a business, because what it really comes down to is cash flow. Right? So in business, you're a healthy business when you have healthy cash flows and, to your point, profits. In your household, you know what? It's just the revenue's coming in from someplace different, but it's still about having healthy cash flows. So if we level set there, and for the listeners, we're talking to all of you. So whether, again, you have an LLC or S Corp, SC Corp, doesn't matter. This is for everybody, right? What I learned over the years, and when I came into the industry 20 years ago, it was all about what people, the TV shows, right? You know what I'm saying? So you think about the movie Wall Street and somebody up there like, oh, buy this, sell, 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 buy, buy, buy. And people thought that's what we actually did. And to a certain extent, when I got into the industry, we were kind of trained that way, right? But as I start to evolve and really kind of dig into the issues that people have, what I realized was people didn't have a plan. So though we're licensed to deal with all these different products, stocks and mutual funds and crypto and insurance and things of that nature, ultimately it comes down, do you have a written blueprint, a plan? And what I mean by that is this. If we were building our dream home, right? So, we found an acre or two, we're building our dream home. Who was the absolute first contractor you're going to hire? Hopefully you're hiring an architect, because if you're hiring the plumber first, right, or the person doing HVAC or the electrician first, they don't even know where to put stuff, right? So you hire the architect so you can at least map everything out. How many bedrooms you want to have, how many levels, you want a 5-level split, right? You want a basketball court, like all of those things, you need to have that on paper. So what you're doing is getting your dreams and desires out in front, and then work with a professional to help map that out. After you do that, it's kind of easy to start plugging stuff in and be like, okay, well, we want this. Okay, this is what we need to do. So having that blueprint is the absolute first thing to do. But this is where the challenge, I think, lies, is this. And I was talking to a good friend of mine about this the other day. There's a trust issue, right? There's a trust issue. Who can I trust, right? And there's also an information issue. Not in a sense of lack of information, but I think almost over. It's too much information.
Too much.
Right? You jump on IG, you got people talking about you can do this, you can do that. You on Facebook, you got people talking about, oh, you should be trading Forex. Oh, no, you should be doing this. Oh, no, right? So it's like all these people, oh, no, you can build wealth through credit. It's so much information out there that you really don't even know how to decipher it through and be like, okay, so, yes, you need to have a plan. But first and foremost, I think you got to find, an advisor, a consultant, a coach, or whatever the case may be, someone who speaks your language in terms that you can understand, and be able to kind of be that, break down that language barrier. Because financial literacy is just like any other language.
Yeah.
Right? So I know the sisters in here, you know what I'm saying? Y'all speak, you know what I'm saying? You got
Tú
the sexy
sabes.
Spanish, right?
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes.
so the deal is like, if I were to go over to Dominican, right, and post up and they're speaking the language and I can't speak it, I'm automatically at a disadvantage. I'm like, okay, well, shoot, I need somebody to help translate this for me. So when you find your person, you got to find somebody to help you translate. So it's because it's a language barrier. So if I was to tie that all together, Christina, I would say this. You need to have a plan, but you need to be working with somebody who you can connect with and who can be that translator, because ultimately what it comes down to is financial literacy. If you don't understand the language of finance, everything seems like noise. And then you're like, I don't know what's what.
And I don't trust everything. So when I see stuff on IG, or people send me stuff on IG, which I get all the time, like, oh, I heard that. I say, yeah, I cannot say that's true. Let me just talk to Perry. Because I know Perry knows. And many times it's like, that's incorrect. What they didn't tell you was. And I was like, oh, I knew it sounded too good to be true. So I appreciate having someone that I trust for years, that I know is going to give it to me straight, that speaks my language, right? Because I think a lot of some financial advisors there's the use of big terms that I need like an acronym and a dictionary to figure out what it is, right? I'm like, well, how you spell that? I got to Google that now.
Right.
But I appreciate that you are very down to earth, and you simplify, not to make it sound like we're dumb, but in a way that we feel actually very empowered. So I really appreciate that. That's
Oh,
why I keep
thank you.
referring people to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Because they come to
appreciate
me, I'm like,
you.
no, girl, I cannot manage your money, but I know somebody that can.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
I appreciate that. But to your point, just to add on to that, it's about a relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of times and especially on the social media side, it seems very transactional, right? Okay, cool. But just go buy this stock or go buy this crypto or trade this and get this insurance and become your own bank. And it's very transactional, right? Versus, do you have somebody that you can rock with on an ongoing basis? Because stuff changes. You know what I'm saying? Marital status changes. Children's status changes. You change jobs. You start a business, right? You kind of want to have somebody who already knows your backstory,
Right.
versus trying to go and trying to tell your new story to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Somebody new. You kind of want to have somebody in the trenches, which you're like, oh, but this is what we did. Oh, I already know what's going on here, right? So now, kind of going back to that same analogy of building a house. So let's say we got the house built, right? And you're like, yo, just find out we about to have triplets. Well, we're going to have to build some extra bedrooms. So, but we already got the house built. Now it's just adding the additional rooms, right? So again, having that relationship. So that's why it's so important to have somebody that you can rock with, who doesn't talk over your head. Like me personally, I hate being in a room with financial advisors. I'm like, oh, here we go. Everybody's going to show how smart they are.
Yeah,
Right?
it's true.
Yeah. So that's real.
And I like that you kind of started off like to have a written plan, because I think that, because I think America as a whole, we're very driven on economic status.
Yeah.
And so, but for some of us, that might not be necessarily, not that it's not important, but I think when you talk about writing a plan, you're really trying to figure out, what are your goals?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not that I want to be a millionaire. Maybe it's just that I want to be able to retire at a certain age, or I want to make sure that my kids have the ability to go to college if they so choose, or I have investment capital to help them start a business. So I really appreciate the fact that you talk about the plan first, because then it really, there's no fluff in that. It's between you and you, really yourself initially.
Yeah.
Like, what are my goals? What is it that for me in this journey of building wealth or building just a financial blueprint, what are the goals for me and my household? And then from there, I think being able to talk with experts like yourself, you kind of go in the gate knowing, like, listen, I'm not interested in being a multimillionaire. I just want to be able to retire at 55.
Facts.
And I want to be able to have enough money. And as you're seeing with inflation right now, that's something I definitely want to kind of transition into, even thinking about inflation and thinking about, for some of us who are still millennials or younger in the workforce kind of game, how do we really plan for what we don't really know what to expect?
Yeah.
And, we see the housing market is bananas, which I know you
Nuts.
personally know. You just bought, you finally found a house after a while.
Yeah, like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
And so it's crazy right now into thinking about, and it's a little stressful too, especially for people who are planning for other people as well, whether
Yeah.
you're a parent or taking care of, parents or just yourself. It's like, how do we really start? Like, we can have the plan, right? And think about what's priority to us. But then what makes sense for what we're seeing right now? Because
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a lot of stress in thinking about, okay, when I'm 65, but what about today?
Yeah.
Like, I got to have
I may
gas.
not make it to
like,
65.
God willing. No, don't say that.
No, I'm like, I'm abundant. I'm going to live forever. But what if I don't?
But like,
No
yeah,
doubt.
but like what we're seeing right now, I think has people on edge, because
Yeah.
gas is like crazy for us.
Nuts.
For us, like here in the
Yeah.
Midwest, we've never paid. I know
Yeah.
in certain states like California and things, but we've never been in the $5 range.
I was upset with 3.
Yeah.
And now I'm
Yeah.
like, actually, go back to 3.
Yeah,
Go
that,
back
that,
to 4.
that 5 hit different.
Yeah,
that 5 hit different.
even the
You-
$4.98. I think you're like still playing with me a little bit.
You
know,
approach that gas tank differently.
Yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
didn't mind
okay.
driving.
You start
before.
questioning your whole life, like, do I really need to go?
Can we have a Zoom
Do I
meeting?
really? Is it really that important?
It's definitely a Zoom
Yeah,
meeting.
it's a Zoom meeting. So, I mean, Perry, like,
Thanks for coming,
it's
Perry.
so true, because I've been stressed about it. Like, wait a minute, these gas prices and and even like the cost of food right now, like
Yeah.
and I think as a parent, like my kids, I'm not gonna lie, like we've gotten them real accustomed to a lot of things that are not necessity.
Facts.
It's just all like, oh, you want Chick-fil-A?
It's
No
once.
problem. You want Starbucks? No problem. And now I'm like saying, we're not
No,
like
no, we ain't doing
we're
that
not
right now.
doing that.
We're not
And
doing
so
that right now.
based on what you're seeing as an expert, like how do we how do we not necessarily come from a place of like scarcity or like shifting a mindset of being like, oh, I'm not gonna have, because
Not
I don't
fear.
believe in that
Yeah.
approaching finances or planning in that way. But like, what are you seeing, and what are some tips and best practices that we as individuals can control, like in our household, in our everyday planning, as we're seeing so much change economically?
How to be proactive, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we start being proactive now?
Yeah, that's real talk. So let's go back 2 years, right? So pandemic rose through, we shut down. People aren't working, stressed out. The unknown happened, and I think I shared something around that time that said, "Hey, with the pandemic, the lesson that it's teaching us is you have to be prepared for the unknown not to happen." Right. So when you think about it, a crisis is something that just hasn't happened before. That's something that we now have to learn how to navigate. So when you think about planning, especially when you start to deal with your finances, you have to think about along these lines. I like to plan worst case scenario, right? Always plan worst case scenario. And really the simplistic way of approaching this without getting into like, this is what your portfolio should look like and you should be doing this, is literally knowing your numbers, right? So to your point, kids getting accustomed to, Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. These chicks over here to my right, hey,
Right.
where you want to go to celebrate? Well, let's go. Can we do Smith and Lewinsky? Oh, okay, George. So I didn't jack myself totally up,
Right,
right?
all the way.
Right. So, but the deal is, you have to know your numbers. So I was running payroll this morning for the company, and literally, I can tell you to the penny what my burn rate is for my business. So when I say burn rate, and so we can understand, it's like, okay, what are my monthly fixed expenses? You'll be surprised how many folks, when we start the planning process, we're like, hey, so do you know what your monthly fixed expenses are? And it's like, well, it's around $3,000 to $5,000. No, we need to know whether or not is it $3,125.72. Like, if we
Right.
understand those numbers
Right.
and start to really start to build on that, then we know, if we know that, for example, if we know that your monthly fixed expenses are $3,000. Well, then we know that we need to ideally have about 6,000 to 9,000 set aside to cover, hey, the what ifs. What if I lose my job today? If we do that in what we call our now buckets, well, then we know we have an emergency cushion. So everything else now becomes noise, right? Because like, okay, lose a job, okay, we can still pay the bills, right? So that's the first thing, just knowing your numbers. And then after you start to really know your numbers, when you start to think about the inflation piece, right? Inflation, last number I saw, CPI number came around, I think it was like 8.3%, if I'm not mistaken. So year over year, inflation, so the cost of goods and services for the listeners, so you guys understand what that inflation is 8.3%, right? Well, then you start to understand that, well, if the cost of goods and services are going up 8.3%, where do I go to have my money grow at that rate? Well, if you look at the stock market over years, right, it's average, let's say 7 to 9%. So if you weren't in the market before, you haven't been growing your money. So what's been happening is you've been losing money to inflation. So if inflation before it got this high, what are we making in the savings account right now? Less than 1%?
Yeah.
So if you're making less than 1% in the savings account and inflation now cranked up to 3, 5, 6, 7, 8%, you're losing money by having too much money in the savings account. So again, it kind of gets back to knowing your numbers. Well, what are my fixed monthly expenses? $3,000 a month. Okay, I got 6, so I have 2 months set aside, right? And then what do I have? 9, 3 months set aside. Now what do I do with those other dollars, right? So then you get into, okay, now you may have to work with an expert on this in this scenario, right? And be like, hey, I want to try to keep up with inflation. Now you can start to navigate that piece and know where to invest the money, right? So in this particular market that we're dealing with right now, it's kind of the perfect storm, unfortunately, right? So housing market is crazy, super high. I was talking to a respected contact today that we may start to see some correction on this because, when the pandemic hit, a lot of folks, mortgage companies couldn't foreclose on people.
Yeah.
Well, that has been lifted now.
Yeah.
And I've been told, by one of my contacts with a major mortgage company that they're now starting to see the influx of
Foreclosures.
foreclosures
Wow.
coming in,
Okay.
right? Which again comes down to, did we know our numbers?
Right.
Right? So literally, I will say this, is knowing your numbers and then understanding that in this environment we're dealing with right now, inflation is through the roof, housing market is nuts, right? The stock market is crashing, right? You know what I'm saying? It's already corrected. We're already into the bear cycle. But how did that impact your household per se? Like, how much of it is noise and how much of it is something that you truly have to navigate, right? Because if you know your budget and you're like, okay, we're at 3,000, but are you spending 5,000? Okay, so just get back to spending 3,000. Like, so I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's what I try to share with my clients is this, even with my business owners, it's just knowing your numbers, right? And if you see that costs go up in something, how many people have subscriptions or how many people have memberships that they don't use? Then it's just getting strategic with those numbers again and being like, well, I don't use this. Let me take that off. I'm not using this. Let me take this off. Where can I get this for cheaper over here? So then you have to start really becoming a better consumer, right? You just try to navigate that cash flow. Now, that's one side of my brain that's telling me that. I have another side of my brain that's telling me this. So it was years ago, I was meeting with a venture capitalist, and I was in his office, and this had to be circa 2004, 2005. And he looked me dead in my face, and I'm a young dude at this time, and way younger. And he says, well, Perry, how do you advise your clients to navigate inflation? Because we was dealing with some inflationary pressures then. So I'm like, oh, well, invest the dollars this way and get some dividends and da-da-da-da-da-da. And he looked at me and said, nope. Make so much bleep money that you don't care about the cost of gas. And I said, huh.
Well, I like that one.
So that one stuck out to me, right?
Yeah.
So literally, I was at the gym the other day and somebody asked me about my truck, like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? How much it cost to fill that up? I said, I ain't tripping. I said, he said, you ain't tripping? I said, nah, because I did a call at the beginning of the year saying that we were potentially entering a commodity super cycle. My commodity fund is up 40%. So yeah, I may be pouring more at the gas tank, but my portfolio is keeping up with that. So again, it's just understanding and learning how to navigate those numbers. Yeah. So it's not like a wand that can be waved. Everybody's going to approach it differently, and it really depends on where you are in your process. So are you a young person who's looking to accumulate? Are you somebody who's about to retire on a fixed income? Like, it's different for everybody. Right. But ultimately, what it always comes down to is, do you truly know your numbers? And that's for personal and business.
And it's funny because so many times I think I have asked Perry, because people asking me this all the time, well, how much should I invest in Bitcoin? And how much should I do on this and that? And he's like, but do you know your numbers?
Yeah.
Right? Because I can't tell you how much you can invest until I know what your numbers are. Yeah. And I just be like, well, that's not the answer I wanted, Perry, but like 5%, $2, right? Yeah. But that's an advice I've been giving people. Like I personally have to work those numbers. Like, what can I truly invest? Now, I have investments, thank you, Perry, but I would like to talk about the 40%, so maybe like that's another call, because I don't know what my percentage is right now, but I like the 40, and I like to get to that number.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what I appreciated when my husband and I also met with Perry, and we did our whole financial plan, because we were those people that like, fun. We were like, we want all these things, but we didn't have no plan. We didn't write nothing down.
That was fun.
No blueprint.
And and I'm an entrepreneur. My husband is not, and he's definitely a very corporate America. He's very 9 to 5, which I appreciate. I'm so grateful for. But we're definitely very two different mindsets. And so sitting down with Perry, I think was really eye-opening for us, because we were a little further along in certain ways than we thought we were, but we didn't know that. And so we sat down and looked at the numbers. But what I appreciated about Perry's advice, because we were like, a lot of people like, do I invest? And Perry said, until you got this amount of money in a savings account, like it was real clear about like, do you have 3 to 5 months in a savings account for the what ifs, for the potential.
Which you experienced the what ifs when the pandemic happened.
Oh yeah, when the pandemic happened, like my husband was part of that industry that got furloughed for a while. And so we was like, gratefully, like we really don't. We haven't yet started to live outside of our means. We were getting ready to. I'm not even gonna lie. We were like, you know what? We just gonna buy. No, it was even before that. I think God just stepped in like, no, this is not about to happen right now, because we were like looking at a house that really was like, okay, we could make it work.
Yeah.
But we really didn't have like, and so when Perry was like, well, before we even talk about stocks, because it does fluctuate. There's no real guarantee in certain areas. So like, are you prepared to take that L? And
Yeah.
how is that going to affect your monthly household?
Yeah.
And so when he started to say that, it kind of made us quickly think about like, eventually we want to get to that place where we can put in, like, I already got like a little bit of an account going, but nothing major. But until we can hit a certain amount in a savings just for the what ifs,
Yep.
before we start rolling out like money that we are not necessarily okay with if
Yeah.
we lose.
Yeah. So it's so cool because a lot of folks don't understand what the planning process is, right? And most people think, hey, when you hire a financial advisor, they're going to come in and be like, oh, okay, we need to invest in this, or I'm going to put you in
Right.
this insurance product. And I'm
But
like,
some do, though.
Some do.
Some
Yeah,
do.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
wrong
yeah.
people do.
The wrong people do.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right about that, right? So, and I used to be some people, right?
Okay.
Yo, that's how I was
Thanks
trained
for
when I
growth.
first. You're right.
Yeah.
right. When that's how I was trained when I got into the industry 20 years ago, right? It wasn't about the plan. It's like, oh, this new investment is doing this, and we have this, right? So our transition was really to get laser focused on the planning side, because what I've started to find out, even with my personal finances, and for those who don't know my backstory, before 2009, when we had that great recession back then, I had accumulated about a $4 million real estate portfolio, 25 units I think I had, right? And you notice I'm saying past tense, because I don't have that anymore. And it's like, whoa, how did the financial advisor, right, lose? Guess what? Because it wasn't a plan. I didn't have any structure for my money. It was just like, oh, it's kind of one of those hustle mentalities. Hey, I just go out and make more. I just go out and make more. And then when that market crashed and the bank stopped lending and we couldn't go and do that, kind of run that game anymore, it's like, ooh, we're losing everything, right? So I say that to say, to kind of go back to it, the plan gives you peace of mind. And so when I'll hear people say, oh my God, so I'm at the gym like, oh my God, the market just, ooh, you don't have a plan. I can tell you don't have a plan because you're really upset about what just happened, because the market correcting or going into a bear market is not anything new. It should be expected. It's almost the equivalent like to somebody living in Florida and being shocked that a hurricane came through.
Right.
You know a hurricane is coming through.
Right.
Yes.
So if you have a plan and you've already, have already factored that in, oh, you're like, oh, hurricane coming through. Okay, let me board up. We know
Right.
the drill, and hunker down and you're good, right? So that's where that plan really comes into play. So when I start realizing that, especially kind of dealing with that Great Recession, right? Because everybody was freaking out. Banks were getting shut down, crazy foreclosures, the whole nine. If I didn't have a plan, and at that point in time, a lot of my clients didn't have a plan. So everybody's just freaking out. And when I started to get really good at planning, I don't care about that noise going out there because it hasn't impacted my plan. And again, you guys kind of coming through our program know that we simplify it into 3 buckets, now, soon, and later on, y'all. And I'll share this with your audience too. So audience, as you listen to this, I'm giving you a free financial plan structure because we here with my girls, right? So your now bucket, money that's the money that you need in 0 to 12 months, right? How do you invest that money? You don't. You keep it in cash. So if you want to buy a house in 6 months, don't call me with your $5,000 talking about, yo, P, how can I make some quick money? No.
How can I make 100,000?
No. You keep that in cash. Your soon money that you say, hey, I need this money in 2 to 10 years, right? A little bit more conservative, trying to keep up with inflation. Focus on, hey, we're trying to protect the principal, but we at least want to keep up with inflation. So our cash sitting in the bank, because we can't have it sit in the bank because if inflation's at 8, we're making less than 1%. We're losing that game, right? So that soon bucket, 2 to 10 years, more conservative, at least trying to keep up with inflation, right? And in your later on bucket for the folks who are retiring, that's where you can be more aggressive. So that's where my crypto is. That's where my IRAs and 401ks are, right? Roth IRAs, that's in the later on bucket. So when I see the market crashing, I'm salivating like, whoo, I'm gonna get some stuff for cheap, right? We're Eastern right now, y'all. A great shopping district. Like if we used to slide over to DSW, would you rather go to DSW and pay full price or get the same shoes at a 30% discount?
Yeah, Marshall.
I want right. So if you have your stuff broken down just into those 3 buckets, now sit back and see and kind of listen to what's going on. It's like, okay, well, I got my now money, so I got 3 to 6 months of cash. That's done. Not tripping. My soon money, it's not being impacted by this too much. I'm still making income on that. Okay, great. And my later on money that I don't even plan for touching 10 plus years, it's on sale. The market's been full price for almost 20 years. It's been full price since the market bottomed out in March of 2009. Are we surprised in 2022 that the market is correcting? And no, you shouldn't be.
Right.
This should have happened probably 5-7 years ago. So now, if you have a plan, now sooner or later on, buckets, you're like, where's the opportunity right now, right? So again, having that plan takes a lot of emotion out the equation.
Yeah,
It's true.
And Perry, what are your thoughts though? I love that you always talk about cash, being really intentional and strategic with cash. And there seems to be two different types of information that I constantly find on the internet in terms of credit versus cash. And there's an ideology of, there's a generation I feel like that's very against credit. But then there's some people who like use credit, maximize the ability with credit to be able to build, a portfolio to. So I guess I want to hear kind of your thoughts on the credit versus cash game. Like
For
The
sure.
cash envelopes.
what's the real
For sure.
what's the real tip there with that?
Man, great question. And I'll tie this even to the old age debate about what's better, term life insurance or whole life insurance, right? They serve different purposes. So when we talk about the cash and credit piece, and it's funny you brought this up because I see a lot on the social media that, you can go out and create wealth with credit. And it's like, okay, well, how do you create wealth with credit? So you got a 800 credit score. How do you turn that into wealth, right? And a lot of times they're not connecting the dots. So this is where I like to go with it. You need cash on hand at all times, right? Cash is king, but credit is queen. And they can really work hand in hand with each other. So like when I'm working with my business owners, and again, for those who aren't entrepreneurs, this can apply to you as well. I believe in leveraging credit, but not overextending to where I can't pay it off with my cash, okay? So let's go back to we talked about knowing our numbers. And this is how I use the credit and cash game on my end. If I know my monthly expenses are $3,000 a month, I'm putting that $3,000 a month on a credit card that's getting me some points, some rewards, right? And then I'm paying that credit card off with the cash I already had ready to pay that off anyway.
That month.
So instead of using instead of using the cash on the front end, I'll use the credit, get the points, right? Because if you're getting travel rewards, you're getting cash back, you're getting points, you're literally effectively getting paid to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Now you've created some leverage for yourself, right? So I like that play for not only my business owners, but for my non-business owners. So if I pull out my wallet right now, I have 3 American Express cards. I have one for the business, one for the family, and one for my personal, right? So if I feel the urge to go to Mr. Heroes and get a Roman burger, the family don't have to pay for that one. I know that one's on me, but they're linked to 3 separate accounts. The business is linked to my business account. Balance is paid off every month. The personal, for the family is linked to the joint account. So if we all go out to dinner, we know we're going out to dinner anyway. We put on the credit card, it pays right, we pay it right off. And the same way with the personal side, right? So I believe you have to have both. I don't think it's a matter of one is better than the other one. I think a lot of the disconnect is, though, none of us are really taught how to use credit. And that's where you see a lot of the kind of this generation coming behind us, like, you got to use credit. And they're using credit in phenomenal ways. Whereas when I kind of think about my mom, she has excellent credit, but had a bunch of debt. And kept getting more and more credit cards because she was paying stuff down and kind of I'm going to pay the minimum payment now. And okay, I'm going to put a little extra on it when I hit that bingo and things of that nature, right? So she wasn't taught how to manage or leverage credit. If you can figure that piece out, I think you can really make some moves. So as far as like creating wealth with credit, I don't believe you can create wealth with credit, but I believe credit is one of those tools inside the toolbox of the whole wealth creation piece. So wealth, having good credit by itself, like you walking around with an 800 credit score with no cash in the bank,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how we're creating wealth with that, right? But I believe it is a valuable tool in the toolbox. Another case in point. So you mentioned we just closed on the house.
Congrats.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Mad love. And we just closed on a house, and we went up top on this bad boy. So it's like, oh, goodness gracious, right?
Well, let us know when the barbecue's happening.
Yeah, I'm like, when is
trying
your
to slide
housewarming?
through.
Oh, yo, your
I was thinking
housewarming
that.
gonna be crazy.
I know it's going to be catered and everything. I'm very
Housewarming
excited.
gonna be crazy. Wife already talking about food trucks,
I
right?
know,
You know what I mean?
that's right.
Where's the registry for this?
I'm like, client appreciation day. I
For
can't
sure.
wait. I'm excited.
For sure, it's going
I
down.
woke up thinking that. I'm like, I can't wait.
It's going
I'm gonna
down
ask today.
Yeah, it's going down, right? For sure. So they took us up top, you know what I'm saying, just because the housing market was crazy. So we got the property, right? But because my credit was so strong, right, I got a great interest rate, right? I have instant equity walking into the property, right? We're in an area where I believe that depreciation is almost locked in,
Yeah.
just because of everything we're seeing in Columbus with Intel,
Yeah.
Facebook, Google, and all those companies coming in, right? So when I broke that down and put that into my plan, because I always was looking at the numbers,
Yeah.
I said, okay, they took me up top on the price of this bad boy, and this is going to be my monthly payment. So I had that monthly payment, I'm looking at that. But then I look at the down payment money I had to bring. I said, okay, so that zapped some cash. But the equity that I got out of the equation balanced out. So it never changed my wealth situation. And I have to give some additional clarity to this, y'all, because we keep talking about the word wealth. We believe one of the major disconnects with this money piece is there's like 1,000 different definitions, 1,000 different definitions of wealth, right? If I walk in a room, whether I'm presenting to 1,000, 2, 1, hey, what's your definition of wealth? It's usually like, oh, I got to think about that. Well, what is my definition of wealth? How do you measure wealth, right? If we level set and get focused on this, and goes back to Christina, what you said earlier about, maybe I don't want to be a multimillionaire. I just want to be able to retire at a certain time. We look at wealth as the point in time that you have enough passive income to cover your lifestyle expenses, right? Lifestyle expenses, right? So if you have, 5,000 coming in passively and your lifestyle expenses is 3,000, you have wealth. So wealth is not the size of your nest egg, right? So when I say I looked at our wealth situation, our wealth measurement when we bought the house, I know prior to buying the house, based upon our wealth situation, that we have about 14 years of wealth. Literally, I can tell you, actually, it was like 13.9 years of wealth.
Based on the equity?
So when we look at the wealth, we look at everything. So we're looking at what we have in cash,
Okay.
what we have in investments, what we have in retirement, the equity in the business,
Okay.
the value of the business. So think about wealth this way. If you were to stop doing whatever it is you're doing today, shut it down. So whether you're 9 to 5, entrepreneur, whatever the case may be, if you shut it down today, how many years could you maintain your quality of life?
Without working a day.
Without working a day.
That's it.
Oh,
Whatever
So,
you got.
so I knew going into buying the house, we had 13.9 years. And when I plugged everything else back in, we still had 13.9 years, which I was like, oh, we're good.
Yeah.
It wasn't overextending ourselves. It was like, oh, you know what I'm saying? We just kind of repositioned where our equity and where our value was, right? So I share that with your audience is this. Don't let people, and it's what we've been conditioned, is very antiquated, is what we've been taught. It's like, oh, you got to have this huge nest egg, right? You don't necessarily have to have a huge nest egg. You just have to have sources of income coming in to cover your lifestyle expenses. I've literally had a client who had over $1 million. He was a retired pharmacist, had over $1 million, but was burning through about 10 to 20 grand a month. So yeah, you got $1 million. Who wouldn't want $1 million? You know what I'm saying? Looking at staring on that statement, right? But at that rate, he's out of money 6 to 8 years. And I've also had a married couple that they had 250 all in, but they had money coming in from pension plans, from real estate. Their budget was hella clean. They could tell you every dime, you know what I'm saying, that was going in and out, right? Hey, Perry, we only need $575 to maintain because the house paid off. We got utilities and we like to go, a bowling every once in a while, right? And they were wealthier than the pharmacists who had $1 million because that's how we have to look at wealth. Wealth is a measurement of time.
I gotta calculate my years, guys. I have so much homework. I gotta calculate how many years of wealth I have left. Okay? I just want to know.
Wait, here's the deal. When I asked that question, right, and I posed him like, so if you stop working today, how long could you maintain your quality of life? And I ain't just talking about the bare necessities.
Right.
Like if you like to go over here to Brio and drink Bellinis on outside in the summertime, and they are so
They're
good.
so good.
It's so good. If that's your jam and that's what
Right.
you like to do every Wednesday, you need to factor that in, right? So, I hear people say like, man, Perry, if you say it that way, man, I might have 5 years, or I might have a year, and then inevitably it's gonna be somebody in the room be like, psh,
I
bro,
have a month.
I got like 24 hours. I'm waiting for direct deposit to hit right now,
Right.
or bills ain't gonna get paid.
For real,
Right?
yeah,
So,
and that's a lot of people, and it's not to be like making fun of that,
Yeah,
or
it's
to be
not.
because
the
I think
reality.
it's coming to a place of really being real about where you are.
Yeah.
Because I think this is also a culture of fronting all the time, like I got this, I got that, I'm driving a new car, but I'm living,
Right.
So I think there has to be a moment of realness when you ask yourself, like, if I had to look at, if I couldn't work today,
Shut it down.
how long could I go?
Shut it down.
And so it's not to be like, I got more money than you. It's more of like, you got to be real with yourself at the end of the day.
And that's where it comes into being an individual situation,
Yeah.
right? Because if my monthly spend is $1,000 a month for my lifestyle, right? I don't need them. I can go buy me two rental properties and be good, right? But if I'm out here overextended, spending 10 stacks a month, 15
Yeah.
stacks a month, and you out here on social media like, oh, I'm killing it, you know what I'm saying? I got the new this, da-da-da. Okay, if your business stopped today, how long would you be to maintain that quality of life? So it's different for everybody, but at the end of the day, it's what do those numbers say? The numbers don't
Yeah,
lie. You know what I'm saying? Like Jay-Z
exactly.
said, that moment of clarity.
Right. It's so true. Well, Perry, I feel like we could talk to you forever about so
Yes.
many things. And I appreciate just, the transparency that you always give to whether it's you're teaching a class or you're working with clients individually. And I also, where can our listeners, if they wanted to set up, I know you do consultations and things of that nature. Can you speak to a little bit about just what is your process and where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. So our process is pretty simple. You can connect with us on social media, right? So LinkedIn, just my name, Perry Jeffries. Pretty sure you can probably go to our website, perryjeffries.com. You can go to our other website, diamondequityadvisors.com. Softflex, you can just Google me. My contact information is going to come up, right? And then, if you're let me say it this way: we're not the right fit for everybody. Like I'm dope at what I do, but I'm not. I know I'm not everybody's flavor, right? And where we've grown our business now is we only want to work with clients who want a long-term relationship, right? So if you're looking for transactional and looking for, hey, what's a good cryptocurrency or a good stock idea, or yo, what was that 40%, commodity fund you was talking about? We ain't a good look.
Right.
But if you are genuine about having and establishing a long-term relationship and you want to see if we're a good fit, definitely reach out to us. We don't charge anything for our consultation. And then from the consultation piece, we'll be able to determine if it's a good fit for both parties. Because again, if we're going to start dating and eventually get married in this piece,
Yeah.
there has to be a win-win for everybody, right?
You got to be ready to do the work.
You got to be ready to do it because I'm
Right.
gonna give homework. I'm gonna give homework. I'm like, yep, here's your homework.
Perry will straight up be like, well, here's all the documents. We're waiting for you. And I had told Maylin, I was like, yeah, we just submitted. She was like, yeah, I still haven't done my worksheet yet. Not trying to put you on blast, but
Yeah,
we
she-
talked about this.
Yeah, she put me
because
on blast.
it's imperative that people understand, when you contact somebody or you go to consult for services,
Yeah.
you got to be ready to put in the work
Yeah.
because then you're wasting people's time.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that because even in the work that we do every day with our consultants and just the organization we run, we're here to help, but if you're not ready to really dive into the experience to really help yourself, we're here to guide you, we're here to advise. But I think it takes a place of you coming to terms in your mind, I really want this. It's one thing to say that I want to create wealth or I want to be able to, build a financial portfolio, but are you really and kind of how are you doing that self check-in to where it's not because everybody's doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, because all my friends, they got financial advisors. I think I'm ready. But no, this is about you and your personal journey. And I think, I'm in my late 30s and my husband and I just met with Perry a month ago. And I think for the longest we were just doing a little bit of what our jobs told us to do or what we thought the right thing to do was as an entrepreneur. And then finally I was like, yeah, I'm done pretending that I have a portfolio. Like, I don't. And I mean, I could look at my bank account, I could look at my credit, but I think it's important that we have to stop with this concept of, we want to just be so Instagram or, the flex of financial wealth, and really saying like, okay, am I really ready? And am I really ready to put in the work? And I feel like you as a professional, that's something that you really are, that's the expectation. So if you're not, I think that's just something you have to guide and figure out.
And watch his videos, gets on his calls. It's like, I also appreciate about Perry that he does literally, I feel like a call or a training, like at least once a week. I'm like, man, I'm on this meeting.
I'd be so busy. I'm going to get on, I promise.
I'll be salty because I'll be signing up, like I have to watch the replay now because this meeting just got on the way of my training and I'm trying to make money, right? So I appreciate that you do give a lot of value. So for those of you that are trying to figure out who Perry is, I mean, we can tell you we'll never recommend someone that we don't believe and trust in because we won't do that. But I've been working with Perry for years. And I recommend that you go to one of his trainings, one of his master class, and those things that he does, because you get to know him, you learn, and then you see other opportunities that you have and how you can really join, right? Because I'm part of the cash flow group.
Yeah.
And I love that membership. It's an online membership. I'm busy, so I may not be able to join a call, but I can go and watch a video. I can go watch, get some of the materials and kind of do it on my own time.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. And you did that because you cannot meet with 1 million people.
Facts. And thank you so much, Maylin, for bringing that up, because we do have a ton of content out there for everybody, right? So, and I always forget this piece because marketing is not my jam, but definitely go on our YouTube. Like, I give it all away on YouTube. And what I tell folks is like, if you just want the information, go to YouTube. The information is free.
Yeah.
You pay me for the implementation.
Right.
The information is free. And when you're ready to implement that, right, and get it customized for you, that's when you circle back to us and be like, I'm ready.
Let's do the consultation.
Yeah. So go get that information for real, because that's what is out there. Thank you so much for bringing that up, sis.
Absolutely. And I think it's peace of mind. So Christina mentioned it and I will mention it. I think sometimes we are listening to the wrong people because there's so much information. And you also don't know because your parents didn't help you because they didn't know better. So you are overthinking things and stressing yourself out to the ground when you could really just have a conversation and get some peace. I know that Christina and her husband had a lot of more peace, right? Because I'm very abundant in positivity. My girl's going to be fine. And she's like, yeah, we need to see the numbers. I'm like, then you should talk to Perry, right? And the numbers really brought peace to them to know that they were doing some right things and what they needed to do. And that eliminated that baggage and that burden of overthinking and really thinking they were not what they needed to be or they were not on the right track.
Yeah.
So don't do it. Like, this is why we brought Perry here. Now you have a resource. Go find the information, and if you have questions, I'm sure by following him, he will probably answer some of those in his comments.
Or I have a video for you.
Yeah, or a video.
So many videos,
it's so
guys.
true. Because it really brought peace to my husband. I think more so because, like I said, he's not an entrepreneur. So in his mind, me not working a structured, he's like, you just messing us all up for retirement. Like, he don't say that to me anymore. He's a lot like, so how's this gonna work? Like, he's learning over the years of how to approach me about money. But back in the day, he was like, if you would just get a real job.
You're like, man, you're killing us out here.
We would be good.
Killing us out here right
he's
now.
out here like, you really just, But I think him seeing that, and then we were able to plug in even like our social security numbers. So it was like, it's a plan based off of real data and real questions. And so when he seen that, he was like, all right, this is not a complete bust. We're moving in the right direction.
Continue following your dream, Christina.
He's like, that's fine. Go ahead. Go finish doing what you're doing. So, but real quick, as we, and I just want to ask one more quick question because I think it's prevalent to kind of, as we're talking about so many different things, we kind of have that aha moment, or we experience something that really makes us think about a situation or a decision in a different perspective. Knowing what you know now, the Perry Jeffries today, what advice would you have given your younger self in this whole entire journey of what you've built, what you have been able to contribute to? What would you just tell your younger self?
So many things. I'm going to make this concise just for time here. I remember when I was an advisor, I had an older advisor come to my office one day. He said, hey, just so you know, you're going to do well in the business, but you won't make your major money until you get married. And that stuck with me for the longest, right? And I was like, what are you talking about, right? So when I had my daughters, I thought my hustle game was okay. Oh, I got to provide for my kids. Okay, I'm grinding, right? But when I got married and had a partner, and I didn't feel all the pressure was on me, and I had a partnership, it was huge. So one of the first things I would say is be very strategic and very conscious about who you partner up with. It's almost like a merger and acquisition of a company. If you think about yourselves, and I'm saying that you still consider love and attraction and all of those things, you got to have that. But after you get past that piece, can I build with this person?
Right.
So that's huge in there, because if you find somebody you can build with, even if you jack up and mess some stuff up, if you rock with somebody that you can build with, you can still win. So first thing is that. And the second thing is not having a team. Being an advisor, everybody look like, oh, you know what you got going on, you know what I'm saying? You're driving a Jag, da-da-da, you got these cribs, right? And I was just making money, coming from Akron, I was just hustling. I was making money, I didn't have a team. And honest to God's truth, I have a client now who has over 80 rental properties, and I believe like 60 of them are paid off. So his monthly income is bananas. He and I were sitting down talking, and we had the same number of properties in 2009, the exact same number, right? What did he do different that I didn't do? So I'm just now with buying this house here recently. I just got this first time I closed on a house since 2009, right? What did he do? So I'm on property number 1, he on property number 80. What did he do different? He'll tell you. He went and hired experts. He hired attorneys. He stroked a check for 10 stacks, and he got the coaching and the consulting that he needed. So when the market was going crazy, they did and restructured his business differently. The good stuff went over in that company. The bad stuff went in, the good stuff went in this company. Bad stuff went in that company. And he came out of that bad boy almost unscathed and actually better off, right? So I'll say this, and I guess it really comes down to just all inclusive. Build your team. Do not try to go make these decisions on your own. Life is not a solo sport. Business is not a solo sport. Your finances is not a solo sport. You know what I'm saying? After we kind of get the plans together for people, it's like, all right, moving forward, do I need to connect with your accountant? Do I need to talk to your lender? Right? You know what I'm saying? Again, ongoing relationship. So really, I guess I'm saying, to kind of pull it together, build your team. Don't think you got to go about this by yourself. It is hard, and you will mess some stuff up.
Your home and professional team.
Facts.
Right.
Facts.
That's facts.
Build your
Perry.
team.
Well, Perry, thank you so much. We appreciate having you today. Maybe we can have you back next quarter, just as a check-in with you.
No doubt.
But as we're closing our this really powerful episode,
Yes.
I feel like there's so much. And let us know in the comments kind of what was your biggest takeaway from today's episode. We can definitely share those comments with Perry. But as you always know, we like to close out each one of our episodes with an intentional way. It's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited, and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.